Hello, how's it going? It's Carrie again with another episode of Gardenside Chats. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're out at the Veterans Urban Farm, which is exciting. There's a lot of activity out here, a lot of harvesting, a lot of washing produce, a lot of weeding going on. Today we are going to talk about keeping critters out of the garden. So that can be mammalian critters like bunnies, groundhogs, feral cats. That could also be insects like cabbage moths are floating around here a lot, cucumber beetles, anything in the insect kingdom. So we have a couple different examples to show today. I have talked about integrated pest management in a previous Gardenside Chat, and that's just a whole bunch of different strategies all taken together to keep pest pressure down. And some of those strategies involve physical controls, which is kind of like fencing or keeping things physically apart from the plants that you're trying to protect. So this is a really good example of that. I don't know if during that Gardenside Chat I had a good example, but this is called insect netting. And if you're like a crafter or sew or anything, it's very similar to the tulle fabric. I think I pronounced that correct, Tulle. So it's pretty sturdy. This is our third year with it. It is a little costly, but it keeps butterflies and moths off of, this is kale, so off of anything, but we use it a lot for cucumbers and also things in the brassica family like kale and collard greens and mustard greens and stuff like that. And the reason why we use this is it acts as a physical barrier for cabbage moths, which are the little cute white moths you see floating around at this time of year, or any beetles, anything that is coming in to eat or suck the sap of the plant you want to protect. The trick with physical barriers such as this insect netting is you got to make sure that it's really like weighted down. You can see that we have sandbags weighting down the whole edges of the insect netting. So that keeps it from flapping in the wind, which is really important, because if it's flapping in the wind or has a lot of holes in it or something along those lines, it's less effective. Obviously, there's more spaces for those insects, or you can even use this for like raccoons and stuff. Those critters, shall we say, to get in and kind of do their damage. So that is to also say, like, when we harvest this kale, we take the insect netting off, harvest it real quick, and then immediately put the insect netting back on. So we try to keep it uncovered, kind of open to the elements as short of a time span as possible. So insect netting comes in, like, it's usually used in farms, so it kind of might be scaled outside of a normal like gardener's like ability in size and price. So that's why I mentioned the tulle fabric earlier. You might be able to call a fabric store and order bolts or whatever of tulle and utilize it in the same way as we're utilizing insect netting. So we have it just draped over some PVC hoops. You can use wire hoops. You can anything that won't snag on the fabric to lift it up off of the plants. So we use this, like I said, for insects. If you had a small garden, you probably could use it to like deter cats or rabbits from getting in, although I've never tried that myself. For those kind of like furry pests, we use an actual like fence around the property, like you hopefully can see here. This fence is called a rabbit fence, so it is the dimensions of the weave of the wire are too big for mature rabbits to get through. But you know, just like the insect netting, if you have the gate open and a rabbit comes in and lays her rabbit babies, has rabbit babies, the rabbits can get stuck in here. So an important component of keeping critters out of your garden is kind of, as best you can, I mean, it's not going to be perfect, creating this like impenetrable barrier. So like making sure your fence doesn't have holes in it. Another thing we do often when we install fences for gardens around town is we'll have this rabbit fencing above, and then we will dig a trench down along the base of the fence, dig a trench right here, and then lay chicken wire in that trench. So something like a groundhog that is prone to digging can't get under as easily. And so that's just another level of inconvenience for these critters to keeping them out of your garden. And so that's a part of it, is just making it harder for them to want to get to it. If it's more difficult for them to access, they're probably just going to move on and find something easier. So a fence that has a gate that you can latch and that you go in and out and latch the gate each time is a really important component in keeping critters at bay. Our fence is about 4 feet tall, which is too short to keep out deer. We've never really had deer issues out here, which is really great for us. A lot of people in Columbia do have deer issues. So if you want to make a deer-proof fence, the fence, you can either go 2 routes. The fence either has to be 7 feet tall, so a deer can't, jump over it, like this. Or deer can jump really far vertically, but they can't jump horizontally very wide. So if you aren't in a position to build such a tall fence, there's a lot of infrastructure to that really tall fence, you can put 2 shorter fences 3 feet apart, and a deer cannot jump over that 3 foot width. So you could put this fence and then another fence right here, and a deer can't make it over that, which is pretty impressive. Space, I see the tall fence more frequently in Columbia, because the 3 foot wide horizontal fence around the whole perimeter could be a space issue that some people can't afford for deer protection against their garden. I have had, so the physical barriers keep them out, so like fences, netting, row cover keeps things out. For kind of these larger animal pests, we've also had gardeners successfully just deter things like deer without installing a deer fence. And I've never personally done that, so I cannot really speak to personally its effectiveness. But what a lot of people do when they just try to cheaply deter deer from their garden is they get a bar of Irish Spring soap, like that green bar soap, and you can shred it with a cheese grater, and then you put it in baggies and poke holes in the baggies, and then you hang those baggies around your garden. And I guess the idea behind that is deer don't like that smell, and so they'll just stay away from it. However, like kind of the trick is anything that repels animals, if they realize that nothing is happening from it, it might lose effectivity over the course of time. However, we did have a gardener who for several gardening seasons lived right next to a deer trail. I could see the deer trail, and they just used this Irish Spring bar soap tactic, and it worked really well to keep the deer out of their garden. So that's when I tell people, if you don't have the resources or the time or maybe the longevity in your garden to install such a tall fence or a wide fence. So there's a whole world of physical barriers to keep critters out of your garden. We prefer the row cover or the fence, but you can get really creative and do a whole host of things, like get a picket fence. It looks cute, keeps out most critters. So there's a lot of different options that you can use to suit your garden's needs.
Have you heard about dog hair? Does that work?
I have not heard about dog hair.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah. If you have any critter tactics of your own that are kind of unusual or unique, please share them with us so that we can then share them with other people and kind of spread that knowledge throughout our gardening community here. Let us know if you have any other questions. Other than that, I'll let you go on this beautiful Friday afternoon. See you guys on Monday. Bye.